Hello and welcome everybody to our next topic on our webinar series for the USDA FSOP grant. We are talking about today about the work plan and the research matrix for your grant. Next slide, please. To acknowledge, we are a collaboration of Texas Tech University, Alabama A&M University, and Iowa State University, and we have an FSOP grant titled Empowering Minority Serving Institutions Food Safety Specialists to Write Successful Food Safety Outreach Grants through Education, Training, and Technical Assistance. This is to support both minority serving institutions and those that are collaborating with minority serving institutions. Next slide, please. This is our team. I am the PI, Dr. Angela Shaw. I'm at Texas Tech University. We have Dr. Armitra Jackson at Alabama A&M University, Dr. Shannon Coleman at Iowa State University, and our grant guru, Dr. Christine Strohm. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Strohm as she goes through our work plan and matrix for success.
Thank you, Angela. Work plan and metrics for success is our topic today. We will cover the reasons why we should think about putting a work plan together, how to prepare it, and what we define as measurable results. So here are the definitions. What is a work plan? It identifies your focus areas, your methods, and your goals, while in collaboration with your co-PIs, probably, you will clearly set up what will be done, what will be required to do it successfully, who will do it in your team, and when it will be done. So it will include milestones and outputs or deliverables, and it will give us a clear indication of when certain steps within that project are successfully completed. Why? Why do we even consider doing this? Who benefits from it? Well, first of all, it ensures the completeness of the planned work. By putting all these bits and pieces together in a cohesive plan, we make sure that we identify every crucial step that has to be taken and every crucial piece of equipment or expertise that has to come in to make this successful. It will also ensure that while we are writing a compelling proposal, we are thinking of identifying collaborators who will bring equipment that we don't have in-house or expertise that we don't have in-house into the team. We will define milestones and benchmarks to reassure reviewers that of the fact that we know what has to be achieved and that we can measure how close we come to achieving these intermittent goals that we have to achieve in order to be successful. It also gives potential evaluators benchmarks to use in their evaluation plan to make sure that over the course of your project, you're reaching these benchmarks and that your project is on track to success. The work plan provides reviewers with all necessary information to gauge whether what you're gonna do is feasible and whether it has merit. So, and that's not the only reason. Some agencies actually require these work plans. USDA, for some of the bigger proposals, require them. The Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, DARPA, the State Department, they all require these work plans. Some of them have mandatory templates for it. Others leave the design to you, so you can come up with whatever works for you and the project that you are proposing. And keep in mind, because this work plan provides all these crucial information basically on one page, it gives a complete overview of your project, the steps you will take, and even the methods you will employ, it is extremely helpful to reviewers who don't have to read a full 6, 8, 10-page research plan. They can look at this one page and identify whether it makes sense, whether you have thought of everything, whether you're ready to perform all the necessary steps. So every reviewer is in favor of you, more or less, or you create positive bias by providing them with this easy to understand and easy to judge piece of information. So what I want to say is, even if it's not required, always, always prepare one. It helps you in staying focused, and it helps reviewers in appreciating your efforts. So how do we begin? How do we go about it? There is, of course, a difference between single PI projects and multiple PI projects, or multiple institution projects. But whether it's just you or whether you have a team to work with, always start with defining your goal or your goals. Your goals are what you want to achieve in the long term. And if you've listened to other of our webinars before, your goals should be very closely aligned with the goals and the priorities listed in the call. Next, we identify each and every objective or aim that we have to obtain, that we have to achieve in order to reach this goal. Depending on the size of the project and the money that is at stake here, you may have 2 or 3 objectives. You may have as many as 6, 8, or 10 objectives for a 5-year multi-million-dollar project. So there is no clear definition of only so many goals are allowed. Or objectives are allowed. You identify them. Next step is for each of these objectives to identify all the steps that have to be taken to achieve these objectives. What are the specific steps that I have to take to get to my objective? If my objective is to reach more minority farmers for food safety information, you have to go out and find information on where they are and who they are. You have to create material to disseminate to them, either in paper, as YouTube, in personal collaborations. These are all the little steps that you have to take to reach this objective. Angela, you want to step in because you have done this many times. You may have a better example for us.
Well, what I can say is this task form is really those steps that have to be, and we're going to get to this, labeled with somebody specific. But to meet that objective, for a lot of my grants, I have 4 or 5 tasks that have to be due. They might be recruitment material. They might be development of specific material or surveys before I could disseminate the survey, because you got to develop it first before you disseminate it. Then you got to do data collection or data analysis of it. You might have to be writing reports. That might be your milestone. So when you think about your objective, you need to really break down who's going to do it and what are those individual things that you have to do. And those are your tasks that you have to do. So yeah, that's what I would add.
Thank you. And step in every time you have a better example than what I can pull out of my hat. So this is how we start. And this can just be scribbled on pieces of paper in a personal meeting or in a virtual meeting with your team. You scribble it down, so you collect bits and pieces, and then you have to try to put this into a meaningful and easy to convey document that you can present to reviewers. So before we do this, I want to do some definitions here. What is a goal? How do we define goals? Goals are broad statements of what you want to accomplish with the work that you're proposing in the long term. In other words, they are big and visionary. They convey general intentions. They're typically intangible. They can be abstract. They can be very hard to measure. So what we have to keep in mind, though, what we want to achieve with the work that we really, really want to do has to match and be closely aligned with what the RFP tells us the mission and priorities of that particular call are. So in defining your goal for your project, go back into the RFA and look up what they defined as the goal to be achieved with this funding program. And then you tailor your goal to match closely what the agency wants to achieve here. What are objectives? Objectives provide a roadmap for how the work in the project will be conducted and how they will lead the way to reaching that overarching goal that we defined in the previous step. Objectives are focused and practical. Sometimes they're called SMART for measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. They pinpoint your work's immediate effects. What will be the output, the deliverable? What will be at the end once your objective is achieved? In a well laid out and easy to follow proposal, objectives are numbered. So each stands as a mini project for itself. Each objectives must come with a clear description of the methodology you want to use and what else will go into achieving the objective. Angela, you have something.
Yes, this is somewhere that I've grown in. So a lot of times we want to have objectives that once we complete one thing, then we have to do number two. Well, what if objective one fails? Then you have no objective two, you have no objective three. So you really need to, I want to pinpoint that standalone. Each of these objectives has to have measurable outcomes, and the dependency on each other needs to be limited. Otherwise, reviewers are going to come back and say, well, if objective one fails, we have no grant. We're going to waste money in there. So you have to make sure that they are standalone and that there are some backups within your objectives. That's what I was going to add.
Yes, yes. And that doesn't mean that there cannot be interrelationships, that data collected in objective one is then used in objective two. That is normal, and you have to have measures in place to make sure that if the method that you wanted to use to collect these data didn't work, or you didn't find enough participants in your survey, you have an alternative plan. You have a strategy to make up for the failure of that first approach. So what are tasks? The tasks, if you remember, are these little steps under each objectives. They are the specific steps that you have to take to reach the objective. They are the outputs or the deliverables of your project. Each step should result in something that can be measured. You collected X amount of data. You surveyed X amount of farmers. You did a literature review of a certain aspect of the research you want to do. These are all specific things that have measurable outputs. These outputs provide the metrics for success. They facilitate your internal and, for bigger project, external evaluation. Because once you say, I will survey 200 farmers, then if your team evaluates the the progress of the project at the end of the year, they can look at how many were surveyed. Turns out, yes, 200, you're good to go. Turns out only 100, then you have to come up with a strategy for the next reporting period to make up for the shortfall in the first period. Angela, anything else that you need to throw in here?
I would say that this is also, so all that we're talking about is going to feed into your logic model as well as your pitfalls and limitations right here. So when you think about those deliverables and making sure they're practical with what you're saying, if you say you're going to do 5 papers, like that's one of your tasks, let's make sure that you have the capacity to do that, or that you have confidence that if you say you're going to survey 200 farmers, that you have listservs of 500 farmers and not just a listserv of 200 farmers, because not everybody's going to fill out the survey. So you really need to be realistic with what you have when you come out with those outputs from your tasks.
Yeah, and what you said, realistic, that's part of SMART. That's the R in SMART. So what does measurable mean? I try to come up with some examples for you. So you could formulate a task that says, study the impact of temperature on bacteria growth. Here is my mad reviewer ego or persona that will say, well, study. What's the output? When is it done? You can study your rest of your life and never know whether you're done studying. So a metric-driven task definition would be identify the optimum temperature for bacterial growth. Now I know what I'm looking for. When do these bacteria grow the fastest or the longest, or whatever my goal here is, I can identify that temperature or temperature range. Another way, another task description could be investigate growth behavior. Again, investigation is a process or a task that has no defined end. If you want to formulate this metric-driven, you would say, determine the 3 most growth-limiting factors. If you want to be that specific, you can say, determine at least 3, or a minimum of 3. The next one, evaluate the effect of training on proposal success rate. That is borderline. Sometimes this works for reviewers. Sometimes they complain that this is not specific enough. So metric-driven, you would say, for a selected minimum of 25 participants and 5 annual submissions each, track the ratio of award rejection over 3 years. That is very clearly defined, what will be done and what we will know at the end of the task. Angela, anything?
Nothing there.
Good. So, example. If our goal is to increase FSMA compliance among native farmers, we could identify 5 objectives. Develop 6 tailored education materials, conduct 3 training workshops, facilitate access to resources, create 2 community outreach programs, and conduct 10 farm assessments. These are our objectives that we define that will help us reach our goal of increasing FSMA compliance among native farmers. When we dig into one of these objectives, for instance, objective 1, we can say, the objective is to develop 6 tailored educational materials. Now let's be specific. Task 1.1, develop brochures and fact sheets on precision agriculture. And that now doesn't go to food safety, I'm sorry, but I'm not in your field, so I make things up. Task 1.2, prepare informational material for rural radio and social media. Task 1.3, create videos showcasing equipment and software. Task 1.4, create field test kits for farmers. Task 1.5, demonstrate decision support tools. Task 1.6, organize annual field and demonstration days. These are all very specific tasks that at the end of the year can be measured. Did we do this? Angela?
Nothing there.
So now after I said earlier, you have it all scribbled on some pieces of paper. Now we have to put it in a format that is easy for the reader to take in and to appreciate and to gauge feasibility and merit of it. So here I put it into an Excel spreadsheet that lists the tasks and subtasks, or here it is the objective. It also lists the output or deliverable with each task, and it puts in a time frame of when this will be done. Typically, a timetable, a time frame is always a requirement with any call for proposals. So in one form or another, you have to put it in. This is not wasted space. You have to have it anyways. But here, in this kind of presentation, you connect your objectives. Oh, I'm too far. Your objectives with your deliverables, with the time. And if you work with a larger team, if this is not a single PI project, you can also add either under the objective, if all the tasks are being completed by the same person, or with each task, who is responsible. So in other words, here you can show reviewers that you already have distributed all the work, you know who's doing what and when, and you know what the output has to be. Now Angela has something.
I was just going to say, when it comes to the timeline, sometimes we get into the habit of just blanking it out for the whole time period of the grant. No. Reviewers look at that timetable, and after every year, you need to have things that are coming out of the grant, because you have an annual report every year. So they don't want to see long lists. They want to see strategically when you're going to be doing these tasks, and who's assigned with them. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, and here, this table actually gives that to you. After year 1, 2025, in your report, you should mention how many individual fact sheets, how many radio interviews, how many TikTok, YouTube videos. That all goes into your annual report, if you achieved it. And if not, we talk about that later. Here is another way to go about it, that people use because they're used to it. You have the objective, and then you have identified tasks, you have responsibility assigned, and you have start and end month. All the information that reviewers are looking for is again assembled here. It is just a little bit more involved for the reader. In the other version, we go back, you see, this is a more visual thing. It's easier on the reader. Whereas here, I have to read every column, every section, and connect them. That's not bad, but my impulse is always to make it as easy as possible for reviewers to get what I want to say. So I prefer the version that I showed you first. This, I think, reaches reviewer on a much more direct and easy way. Here's another one that basically reflects what the first one did. We have tasks. We have what here they don't call it deliverables, they call it milestones, and they identified the time again. And when you look at the milestones, you see that most every single one of them has a number. So when you start wondering, well, what is measurable here? Try to put it in terms of numbers. That is measurable. Everything you can put a number to is a measurable entity. So, crucial information that every work plan has to convey is what will be done, the tasks, who will be responsible, what are the deliverables or the milestones, in other words, the metrics for success, and when will it be done. If you work with a bigger group for a bigger price, for a, say, multi-million-dollar USDA proposal, then you typically need an evaluator, an independent evaluator, somebody who is not part of your team. They don't have to be external to your institution, but they cannot be part of your team. This evaluator should be brought in very early when you start creating this work plan, because it is on them in the end, once you get the money and they evaluate the progress of your project, to check whether these milestones, whether these deliverables were achieved. So having their input early in guiding you how to define success for every reporting period is helpful for you and helpful to them and the reviewers later. This piece also informs the evaluation plan that the evaluator has to put together. That is crucial input for them to define how they will measure the progress later. Angela?
And I would just add to this that the evaluators love that research plan. It makes their lives a lot easier. But for a lot of grants, during your annual reviews, they have to do that formal evaluation. And so it's easy for them to go back and say, oh, you have 3 YouTube videos. Oh, you haven't made it. And then them to provide you with feedback on how are you going to make up for that, and having those conversations. So I just had for another grant, we just met with our evaluator on that grant, and we wrote some things that we weren't really doing. And so he called us on it. And he was like, you guys need to get started with this. You're getting towards the end of year 1. And you said that these were going to be part of your outputs, and you haven't even started on them. And we were like, oh, we're on it. We're on it. We're going to work towards it. So they're great.
Yes, they're extremely helpful for everybody involved, and not just for the people who look over your shoulder. But if you are the PI and you have, say, 3 co-PIs, and they may not even be in your institution, they may be somewhere scattered around the country, you have a roadmap here in your work plan. You can go back to Jane and say, hey, Jane, you said you start on task 1.2 on, I don't know, developing a survey. I haven't seen it yet. When can I get it? When is it going to be ready? So you can keep your team within the guardrails and make sure that nobody, because they're very busy with other things, forgets the one thing that they were supposed to do right here, or postpone it because there's more pressing problems to be resolved right now. That creates bigger problems for you in the long run. So you want to make sure that everybody is on the same track. You basically have a contract here between the funding agency, you as the PI, and your co-PIs of what will be done when. And there is no discussion. Oh, I thought I can do it in year 3. No, you didn't think it was in year 3. It's written down here. It's in year 1. So it minimizes the friction that can be created if these things are not clearly spelled out right from the beginning. All right. Questions?
So I would have you go back a few slides so that we can look at one of those work plans again. And let's stop with the go forward one more to this other, no, one more. There we go. Up,
Which
go
one?
backward. There we go.
Okay.
So I love this work plan because it number one, and what I can tell you is for all my grants, I do a work plan or this matrix, and I mean all of them. If I'm doing a state, if I'm doing a commodity one and it's for $1,000, I am doing my work plan. If it's going for 10 million, 50, all of them have this work plan, and it actually replaces a lot of times my approach section, because in this, as a microbiologist, I'm able to put the tasks. So if I'm, say, an example, working on a project with produce and we're looking at salmonella reduction, we're looking at intervention strategies. So in my grant, my objective is to identify the best solution and concentration for that reduction. So in here, I have a milestone where we're doing the growing of them, we're doing the evaluation of them, and we're also doing quality part of it to make sure that the quality aspects. So I have tasks. I also have names attached with them. So that's why I love the responsibilities. We have a timeline. And at the end of this grant that I'm working on, we wrote that we are going to have 3 different options for growers for the best methodology for it. And based on that, we are going to have curriculum. So another task is the development of the curriculum. Well, let me just say, in this project right now that we're working on, all of the interventions thus far are not effective. So what are we going to do? We have a backup plan in there where we had some additional options for interventions that we wrote into the grant. So it's important that when you put your methods in here, you're really thinking about, if it doesn't work, if this task doesn't work, what are we going to do with this? And so this applies to whether you have an extension and outreach grant, whether you have a research grant, whether you have an an education grant, like you're developing curriculum. All of these will go in and they really keep you centered going forward. So I want to bring this up and just mention to you that this chart can be flexed, and I love Excel. Excel is your friend for being able to fit it on page. But remember, font size and spacing a lot of times apply to tables. So you need to read the RFP to see, can you reduce the font a little bit, or does it have to be 12 font double spaced even within the tables?
Yeah.
But it takes up a lot of space sometimes, but it is so worth it.
It saves space too. You don't have to write as much in your research plan when you describe what you want to do, because you have this piece that has all the bits and pieces in there. So you can reduce what you actually have to write in prose. One thing I wanted to point out in this one here that illuminates what kind of detailed planning goes into it. Here, they actually have a task obtaining IRB approval. If you collect data from people, you need IRB approval. So you want the reviewers to see that you have thought about that this is all piece of your planning, that nothing is left to surprise. You start with your survey and then somebody cries foul and says, you don't have IRB approval, where is it? So this kind of table shows very clearly that you've thought every step through, and that the minute you get the money, that you get the award, you're ready to pounce. You don't have to have a lengthy period of getting everybody together and planning what to do first and what to do next. It's all here. You are ready.
And that's a great point, because other things that I have put in this workplace are, when is our team meeting? So management plan is where you is something that's required in most of the USDA grants. And under the management plan, that tells you, how are you going to manage your team? How often are you going to be meeting?
Mhm.
How often are you going to be meeting as a PI and co-PI team? How about your collaborators? How often are you going to be sharing data? And how often are you going to be going to conferences on your dissemination plan for
Mhm.
your research? When are those things happening? Are you waiting to year 4, or are you going to be presenting after year 1? You're going to have data present at annual conferences or local conferences, or you're able to put out fact sheets at that point. So all those milestones, you don't want to put everything into year 4 of a grant. You want to have deliverables coming out throughout your grant to show effort, whether that's presentations and or papers or YouTube videos, or so many examples, curriculum being developed. If you have to go through peer review, if you're working with animals, all these
Mhm.
things have to be added in.
Yes.
Are there any questions from those that are in attendance about this work plan and success?
Either in the chat or in the question and answer, just let us know.
So, Christine, I have a question for you. In here, you have some measurable numbers of people. What if you're not truly sure how many people you're going to be able to recruit, and you're not at this point? You think that you're going to have this amount, but you're not really sure. How should you handle that as a grant writer if you're not sure to put an exact number?
You can go two different ways. You can hedge. Instead of saying 1,500 people, you can say at least 1,200. The downside of it is that reviewers notice when you hedge. And then they ask the question, if you are not sure, how can I be sure? So in order to convey that you're confident in what you're doing and in the success, I would always put a real number there, not hedge. If at the end of the period when this has to happen, you're not there, you write in your report why you are not there, what prevented it. There was a bird flu outbreak, so you couldn't go to these 80 farms because they were under quarantine. And you have a plan for how to make up for the numbers you did not reach. They will not take the money away from you. Nothing bad is going to happen as long as you are well prepared to make your argument.
And I love one thing that you should know is when you do your annual report, there's always a section of anything changed, anything they need to be aware of. And that's where you just express. We've had times where grants I just remember COVID. When we were actively in it, we had multiple grants, and we were supposed to have field days. We were supposed to be doing a lot of things at that moment, and all of it got delayed. What happened was we were able to get extension on the grant and be able to still fulfill the work. It just took us a little bit longer, but we were very transparent with our program manager about those. But we were able to put quantities to it and have a method backup on what we would do instead.
Yeah.
So
So
we have a question.
I saw a question. Yeah.
So what is the longest time a project is allowed to take?
A project duration is determined by the RFA. 36 months, 48 months, 60 months. The RFA tells you what the longest allowable project duration is.
And it all depends. Yeah, and that's what we go by. Some commodity grants are just a year, but some of the bigger, we just put in a 10 million, and it's 7 years in length. And so that's kind of scary, thinking 7 years from now I'm going to still be working on this project. But yes, so it could be any length of time, from 2 years, and it also could be dependent upon the type within the call. So sometimes they have like planning grants. planning grants are 2 years versus a standard grant that might be 3 years in length
Yeah.
versus a
Planning
community.
grants can be only 1 year. I've seen those too.
Yeah. So it's really all dependent on the call. And that's also part of your planning of being realistic with what you want to do and the time it's going to take.
Yes.
And I always say add more time because things typically don't go well the first or second, especially if it's a research project, and you might need that time. Or if you're buying equipment, if it's backlogged, or so many things could go in there to provide yourself with some cushion.
And the other thing is always be transparent, as Angela said, with your program officer. If things like this happen, if your piece of equipment is stuck under the Baltimore Bridge and can't be delivered, be transparent. Tell them right away, we have a roadblock here. We're working on it. I'll keep you updated. If nothing changes significantly, we will identify an alternative way. Or if we get it by XYZ, everything will still flow as planned. So be in constant communication with them and let them know when you see something going not quite as planned.
And I would say, especially if you're doing capacity building grants. So we've been successful as a minority serving institution to get capacity building. So a lot of that is construction, where we are adding on, renovating right now some classrooms. And if you don't know, things are very slow right now. And so our timelines for the completion and all that we've had to communicate. In addition to that, if you're talking about summer programs and recruitment of students, you might need to put some leeway into that language of how many students you're going to get, giving yourself some room for recruitment, because that's getting increasingly hard to find students to participate in some of the student experience grants, the REEU grants, and things that are looking at some of this uh, additional activities that you might be participating in. Do we have any more questions? Christine, do you want to go to the last slides to talk about? Again, we always have our webinars on demand. I'm going to stop recording.